Just a few more minutes, and this thing is going to launch. And I thought I'd take you along with me. I'm watching. Are you watching? Let me know. Well, apparently, it's got to be up. I'll be back in just a few moments. Stay tuned. Maybe I should play some music in the background.
other side of the cluster in the middle here. So Raptor's a little bit different. It uses something called stage combustion, which means we basically pre-burn both the fuel side and the ox side, and then get those up to the right temperatures and pressures, and then mix them in the combustion chamber. It allows us to get higher thrust and higher efficiency on these engines than on Falcon 9. Now, Super Heavy also has 4 grid fins to assist with orienting itself during the return back to Earth, as today is the fully integrated flight test, and the first one, we're focusing on safely testing just the fundamental systems and operations of the vehicle. So what that means is we won't be attempting to land on the land today. Instead, Super Heavy is going to be making that hard water landing in the Gulf.
Starship, or the spacecraft, is the second stage and makes up the top portion of the vehicle. It's designed for carrying passengers and cargo between destinations on Earth, Earth orbit, and planetary destinations. It stands 50 meters tall, a little taller than the Statue of Liberty. It's comprised of 6 Raptors. We saw those just moments ago. 3 of them are optimized for sea level, and the other 3 are vacuum engines. They're optimized to operate in the vacuum of space. They provide a maximum of 258,000 tons of thrust in the vacuum tube. The spacecraft is also outfitted with 4 flaps to help aerodynamically control the vehicle's attitude during atmospheric flight and enable precise landing at the intended location. You can see a view of those flaps there.
Now you can see the entire stack is vertical, and that's because Starship is designed for vertical takeoff and landing, as opposed to taking off and landing like an airplane. And that's really important because we don't have runways on the Moon and Mars. Fortunately, gravity at both of those destinations is not nearly as high as it is here on Earth. On Mars, it's about a third of what Earth's gravity is, and on the Moon, the gravity is just a sixth of what it is here. So Starship can take off in both of those cases without needing the Super Heavy booster like we need here on Earth. Now, for today's test, Starship does not have its landing legs attached. That's because we aren't going to be attempting to return to the launch site or land on land. It's going to be doing another hard water landing at the end of today's test.
We can't wait. Starship is wrapped in a heat shield, which is composed of 18,000 hexagonal ceramic tiles designed to insulate the vehicle during atmospheric entry, where temperatures can be as high as 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. The hex-shaped tiles, like these ones that we have here, roughly make up about 2/3 of the vehicle. There's a couple of different geometries. The one that I have is for the circular portions of the vehicle, so it has this curvature to it, and the one that Shiva has.
Yeah, this kind of is a hexagonal shape, and there's several thousand of these all across the body of the vehicle. And it's worth saying, we need these because when a spacecraft re-enters from orbital velocity, it's going faster than the speed of sound and causes a lot of heat to build up that has to get dissipated by these heat shield tiles.
Yeah, one thing that's really cool about...
Okay, you may be wondering why I'm doing this. This is just proof of concept. I wanted to see if I could stream something like this because I'm partnering with someone out here near me. And we're going to broadcast the solar eclipse that's coming up. There's actually 2 eclipses coming up, solar eclipses. One's an annular, and it's coming up in October, and the other one is going to be a total eclipse, and that's going to be April of 2024. So, just trying a few things out, making sure we could actually watch something. Right now we're looking at a view of the Starship that's going to be taking off in just a few minutes. But when the time comes, my friend is going to have a telescope set up where we're actually going to be looking at the sun and then watch the sun or the moon cover up the sun. You know, eclipse, right? And we may actually have 2 telescopes, one with kind of a wide view so we can actually see what the eye would see, and then have another feed where it's the surface of the sun itself, using a special camera and special telescope, and then we'll see the moon covering that surface. But that's to come. This is just proof of concept. Would you be interested in watching on my channel a completely independent view of the solar eclipse? Let me know in the comments, would you? Okay, back to some more information about Starship.
Good news right now is that the weather is looking good. The range also is looking pretty good. We've moved almost all the boats out of the keep-out zone overnight. We are working one, but we're still underway. And right now is a reminder, if for any reason we do not make our test flight today, we have backup launch windows. This could be the 24, 48 hours after today, and it'll depend on how far we get into the countdown. But coming up on 25 minutes to go, everything is looking good, Kate.
In order to make life multiplanetary, we need a fully reusable vehicle that's capable of carrying a huge amount of cargo and a lot of people to orbit and have a pretty quick turnaround. The idea is to effectively reuse launch vehicles just like airplanes. Crowd is getting excited here in Hawthorne behind Mission Control, as you can hear. Now, imagine if you had to wait for a new airplane to be constructed every time you wanted to fly. You'd rarely go anywhere, and it would probably be completely unaffordable for most of us. In order for us to get to Mars and back with lots of people multiple times, usability is a must.
Now, in the near term and a bit closer to home here on Earth, Starship will be critical to other programs as well. Once it's operational, Starship will deliver the full-size and upgraded version of our Starlink satellites. And that's super exciting because our next-generation satellites represent a step forward in Starlink's capabilities and will provide more bandwidth and increased reliability to connect millions of people around the world with high-speed internet.
And of course, Starship will fly a number of human spaceflight missions in the lead up to our first missions to Mars. Entrepreneur and pilot Jared Isaacman will command the first human spaceflight on Starship as part of the Polaris program. Jared served as a commander for Inspiration 4, the first all-civilian mission to orbit. Inspiration 4 launched aboard our Dragon spacecraft and Falcon 9 in September 2021, raising over $240 million for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. The first human spaceflight on Starship will launch as part of the Polaris program, and you can learn more about that series of missions at polarisprogram.com.
Now, our first lunar mission around the moon aboard Starship will be led by Japanese entrepreneur Yusaku Maezawa, also known as MZ. MZ flew to space for the first time in December 2021, he purchased all of the seats aboard Starship's first lunar mission in order to give artists and creators from all over the world the opportunity to go. And the hope is that what they will create in space will further inspire all of us here back on planet Earth. Now, over 1 million people applied for this mission, and earlier this year, they announced the final 8 crew members were selected, and you can learn more about them and MZ's mission at dearmoon.earth.
Dennis and Akiko Tito are the first 2 crew members announced to fly on Starship's second commercial spaceflight around the moon. This will be Dennis's second mission to space after becoming the first commercial astronaut to visit the International Space Station in 2001, and Akiko will be among the first women to fly around the moon on a Starship. The Titos joined the mission to contribute to SpaceX's long-term goal to advance human spaceflight and help make life multiplanetary.
SpaceX is also incredibly honored to be part of NASA's Artemis program to establish a sustainable presence on the moon to prepare for missions to Mars. Starship's early test launches, followed by those regular Starlink deployment missions and propellant transfer demonstrations, are directly advancing NASA's Artemis program, along with SpaceX's ongoing mission to make life multiplanetary.
SpaceX will conduct an uncrewed demonstration mission to the moon prior to the Artemis 3 mission, which will mark humanity's first return to the lunar surface in more than 50 years. It's an exciting future, but let's talk a little about how we got to today.
Now, Starship testing ramped up in July of 2019 with the Star Hopper prototype. It's sort of a short version of the Starship that we see today. There's a picture of it on your screen, the lovable water tower. Now, standing at just over 18 meters tall, the Starhopper had a single engine and was test flown to perform landing and low-level altitude maneuvers. Starship's initial flight test was a hop that reached about 20 meters in altitude. This was followed by a second hop, the one that we've got on our screen, that rose to 150 meters in altitude. We took a little jaunt away from the launch pad and ended up landing about 100 meters or so further away from it, and you can see that on your screen. Now, notably, this was the first time that we had used a Raptor engine in flight and demonstrated control of this kind.
As a Star Wars fan, I can't not see a flying R2-D2 there. Now, after a series of 150-meter hop tests with earlier prototypes, the Starship program saw a huge breakthrough during a test flight of the vehicle known as serial number 8, or SN8. SN8 demonstrated a first-of-its-kind controlled aerodynamic descent and landing flip maneuver. Yes, I'm talking about the belly flop. This 12.5-kilometer hop test took place December 2020 and saw the SN8 prototype ascend to an altitude of 12.5 kilometers and conduct a belly flop maneuver. While it didn't stick the landing, the test was a major milestone in the development of Starship.
I love seeing the belly flop maneuver. Now, testing continued with the prototype on serial number 9. That was a 10-kilometer flight test in February of 2021. We had a nominal ascent, engine cutoff, reorientation, and controlled descent were stable. However, we unfortunately had a dramatic ending to the end of that flight when we had a failure on its engine to relight. That resulted in one of those rapid unscheduled disassemblies. But what was really, really exciting about both serial numbers 8 and 9 is how quickly we were able to achieve just our primary objectives in those two high-altitude test flights. In addition to getting lots of great data, Starship successfully demonstrated control of the vehicle and subsonic re-entry capability.
Ultimately, we performed 9 Starship high-altitude test flights in total, and in May of 2021, SN15 launched from Starbase, reached an altitude of about 10 kilometers, performed a number of maneuvers, and safely returned to the launch site. This was the first Starship prototype to fly, control its descent, safely land, and to be recovered in one piece.
Now, having achieved that success in our suborbital campaign, one of the next big challenges for upper stage reusability is to survive the high heating hypersonic phase of entry. Combined with the ability to refill our Starship's tank with fuel and oxygen while on orbit is what will enable a fully reusable transportation system that's designed to carry both crew and cargo on these long-duration interplanetary flights, and that's ultimately what will help humanity return to the moon and travel to Mars and beyond in our solar system.
So, as you can tell, it is nothing but an iterative process to get to the point that we are today and where we will go from here. That iteration is a core process of how we work here at SpaceX. We like to fly and we like to test early and often, both on the side of hardware and software.
Yeah, that's an awesome point, Kate. Now, we are continuing our countdown to Starship liftoff just over 17 minutes from now. So, of course, let's check in with John for another status update. John?
Thanks, Shiva. Clock is coming up on T-minus 17 minutes from liftoff. We're continuing to click towards 0. However, right now we've just begun listening in. The first stage team is working a pressurization issue. They're troubleshooting that right now. Now, we do have the option, if need be, if we can't solve this, then we would hold the count and probably treat today as a wet dress and not be able to launch. However, we are continuing to do propellant loading on both the Super Heavy and the ship stages. Most recently, we began loading liquid oxygen and methane fuel into the header tanks on Starship. At the very top, just underneath the nose there are 2 small spherical tanks. That's where the fuel and liquid oxygen header tanks are. That started at T-minus 27 minutes, and that propellant loading will continue until T-minus 9 minutes. We'll also continue loading the main tanks with commercial fuels. They're pretty much full right now. Everything will drain back as we get ready for launch in T-minus 5 minutes. Now on the first stage, we're continuing to load the massive amount of propellant onto the Super Heavy booster. That's going to continue until T-minus 3 minutes. You can see the frost line on some of the views as both liquid methane and liquid oxygen go into the tank. In 16 minutes and counting, we're also currently configuring the launch pad for liftoff. The booster hold downs are being prepared for the release at liftoff, and the second stage quick disconnect is beginning its configuration for release. The liquid oxygen and methane that are going into the second stage go through that quick disconnect. You can see in some of the views the arm that comes out just at the base of the second stage. That'll move out of the way as we lift off. At the same time, the SpaceX team continues to check in with the Coast Guard. We're working one boat that's in the safety perimeter. They are working to get that boat out of the way. We cleared several other boats out overnight. We're down to one, and we expect that'll be clear so that we can proceed with launch out over the Gulf of Mexico. But as a reminder, T-minus 15 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. We are working an issue on the first stage, and we'll bring an update as we get more insight into that issue.
Now, today's test flight is taking place out of our Starbase facility in South Texas, and that facility has gone through a tremendous amount of change and growth in a really short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years ago, not much even existed there. It was a very different scene, as you can see by that photo there on your screen. Fast forward to today, and the team is building out an entire production line.
Yeah, last year they built 4 Starship Super Heavy boosters, 5 Starships, our 200th Raptor 2 engine, and this year they're targeting the 5 boosters, 8 Starships in production in 2023. And really, you do need a production system to rapidly iterate, like we were talking about earlier, on the design of the vehicle as we learn more about it from these large tests.
Yeah, absolutely. Pulling on my industrial engineering background, system fill is something that is critical to that goal. Being able to produce and launch multiple Starships means that we have to have a system full of those production vehicles, and we iterate on each one. So even the next Starship that will fly in whatever the next test is will be different than the one that you see there on your screen now.
Now, the employees who have been at SpaceX a while say that Starbase does remind them of the early Falcon 1 days, except moving a whole lot faster.
The team at Starbase is expanding as fast as the facilities are, and if you've ever wondered what life at Starbase is like, here's a quick peek. Starbase directly employs more than 1,800 employees and is actually the largest employer in the area.
Yeah, and from that video, you can really tell like it's a beautiful location. It's close to the ocean. There's tons of wildlife, and that's because being close to the equator is actually a fantastic way to get to orbit.
Yeah, I love that we have so many employee events that allow us to participate with ocean cleanup and other environmental efforts there. We'd also like to thank Cameron County for being so supportive for all of our work in that area. Now, in addition to Starbase, we'll soon be adding another Texas location to the SpaceX family. We're opening a new facility in Bastrop, Texas, just outside of Austin, to support Starlink hardware production. The new facility will be over 500,000 square feet of manufacturing space, and the team has already started hiring.
And we have all kinds of openings in production and manufacturing for technicians and leadership and manufacturing engineers and all kinds of site support roles. Basically, if you can think of a role, we're probably hiring for it.
So if you're interested in helping expand human life to other planets or helping internet access here on Earth, consider becoming part of the SpaceX team at spacex.com/careers. Now, with that, let's check back in with Zach down at Starbase one last time before launch. Howdy, Zach.
Hello, Kate and Shiva again. You can really feel the energy here at South Padre Island as more of the SpaceX team have gathered. We're standing just over 5 miles away from the launch mount, and so from here we've got a very nice view. I would basically say these are some of the best front row seats you could get, and might I add, beachside as well. Now, the Starship team has worked incredibly hard to get ready for this test, and we're all clearly excited for T0. And as we get into the final moments, one issue that could hold the countdown or cancel the test altogether is if a boat enters the safety perimeter. Now, over my shoulder is the Gulf of Mexico, which is normally very open to all of the boaters and fishers. However, today, SpaceX is closely coordinating with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safe zone and ensure public safety. And up to T0, SpaceX is in regular communication with the Coast Guard to ensure there are no boats in the area leading up to the launch. Now, fingers crossed that does not happen. Now, I'll throw it back to the folks at Hawthorne as we get closer and closer to that T-0.
We're just inside T-minus 9 minutes and counting.
It's interesting that boaters and fishers, is fishers really the word? Or did he just not want to say fishermen and fisherwomen? That's a pretty cool shot right there. If you're wondering why you see a little bit of text at the very top every once in a while, it's because I'm borrowing a feed and swapping between that feed and another one. Ooh, rockets.
Team will get this as an excellent opportunity to run the end-to-end of the system. Now in a launch, in the next few minutes, the guidance system would be performing its final alignment. We will be doing that this morning. The automated flight termination system would be armed. We won't need to arm it today as we won't be flying. And we'll do final thrust vector control checkouts, what we call wiggles of the Raptor engines on the first and second stages. Now normally in a countdown, if we needed to hold, there's a view of the second stage Raptor engines, just above the first stage. Now, as I mentioned, in a regular countdown, if we needed to hold, that would come at T-minus 40 seconds. That's the point in the countdown where we can pause to wait for final checkouts or pressurization to complete. Now, earlier this morning, we thought we might have to hold at 40 seconds. Everything's looking good, except for the one pressurization issue that the team is going to have to troubleshoot after this morning. So we won't stop at 40 seconds right now. We'll continue all the way down to 10 seconds, and then we'll go into a recycle.
All right, let's put some music back on. Okay, about 10 more seconds. Oh, they did a 40-second hold.
At least that hold will go the last 30 seconds. But yes, when we do get to day of launch, the last thing to look at is in the last 6 seconds, light the Raptor engines in succession. So unlike Falcon 9, we're going to have to do that a little longer. We're hearing right now the clock is going to hold here at T-minus 40 seconds. The Super Heavy and Starship are looking good. So with that, Kate, it's been a fast-paced morning. We got through it fairly quickly, but
Pretty anticlimactic, huh? Let's play a little bit more music just for a minute. I kind of like this one.